This is that blue beam, that Project Blue Beam, shooting live from satellites onto your screen. The whole world is watching, wrapped in anticipation. Planet X is moving, innocent in palpitation. This is the Nibiru on the verge of revealing truth. The 12th planet in the loop, finally producing fruit. These are the gems of light, with wisdom in their sights. These are the bringers of light, known as the Nunakai. They are the angels, the demons, the aliens, known as the Nephilim, the Elohim and Raelians. They want the war to stop, so transmaking meditations. They come to us through stargates and deeper revelations. They are the spirit beings, straight from the spirit world. That's the ether in between heaven and underworld. And they will move on you in ways untouchable. The all-powerful ones, the incorruptible. This is that blue beam, that Project Blue Beam. This is that blue beam, that Project New Dream.
That was Project Blue Beam, song by Machiafta. Welcome back to another edition of the Awake and Aware radio show. This is your host, Infinite Consciousness, commonly known as Jason. Last week, we discussed the various purposes of chemtrails, and this week, we'll be discussing Project Blue Beam and its holographic principles. I must admit, this is one of the newer topics for myself. I've probably only heard about it in the past year or so, but never really delved too much into it. So let's get started. I have a lot to go over again regarding this. The material for this evening's show came from a variety of sources, though, but much of it came from a report done in 1994 by Serge Monast. Both Serge Monast and another journalist were researching Project Blue Beam. Monast had faithfully exposed the New World Order for the last decade. His children were homeschooled, so the authorities took his 8-year-old daughter away. Then his 7-year-old son was taken. As they said, the parents were abusing them emotionally by stopping the children going to a state school. The father was then arrested and spent the night in jail. Next day at home, he had a heart attack. He was 46 years old. This brave man has left a wife who now has no family. Monast reported that he had been threatened many times and did not expect to survive. He and another journalist, both of whom were researching Project Blue Beam, died of heart attacks within weeks of each other, although neither had a history of heart disease. Serge was in Canada. The other Canadian journalist was visiting Ireland. Let's get started with the information now. According to Monast, NASA's Blue Beam project has 4 different steps to implement a universal religion to usher in the New World Order. I will go through each of these 4 steps now, as Monast brought it forth back in the 90s. So let's start with the first one. Engineered earthquakes. And keep in mind also, when we talked about chemtrails last week and HAARP the prior week and all this other suppressed technology when it comes to natural disasters. So engineered earthquakes and hoax discoveries. The first step in the NASA Blue Beam project concerns the breakdown, re-evaluation of all archaeological knowledge. It deals with the setup with artificially created earthquakes, refer to HAARP, at certain precise locations on the planet of supposedly new discoveries, which will finally explain to all people the error of all fundamental religious doctrines. The falsification of this information will be used to make all nations believe that their religious doctrines have been misunderstood for centuries and misinterpreted. This part comes from me. To be fair, religious doctrine has been mistranslated and purposely manipulated when the ancient knowledge was turned into religion. The second part here, the big space show in the sky. This deals with the holographic nature of Project Blue Beam. The second step in the NASA Blue Beam project involves a gigantic space show with 3-dimensional optical holograms and sounds, laser projection of multiple holographic images to different parts of the world, each receiving a different image according to predominating regional, national religious faith. This new God's voice will be speaking in all languages. In order to understand that, we must study various secret services, research done in the last 25 years. The Soviets have perfected an advanced computer, even exported them and fed them with the minute physio-psychological particulars based on their studies of the anatomy and electromechanical composition of the human body, and the studies of the electrical, chemical, and biological properties of the human brain. These computers were fed as well with the languages of all human cultures and their meanings. The dialects of all cultures had been fed into the computers from satellite transmissions. The Soviets began to feed the computers with objective programs like the ones of the new Messiah. It also seems that the Soviets have resorted to suicidal methods with the human society by allocating electronic wavelengths for every person and every society and culture to induce suicidal thoughts if the person doesn't comply with the dictate of the New World Order. Quick pause. If you remember when we talked about the ELF frequencies that Russia was using against Americans, which created both aggression and suppression, because different resonance can create different emotional states. All right, there's two different aspects of Step 2. The first is the space show. Where does the space show come from? The space show, the holographic images, will be used in a simulation of the ending during which all nations will be shown scenes that will be the fulfillment of that which they desire to verify the prophecies and adversary events. These will be projected from satellites onto the sodium layer about 60 miles above the Earth. We see tests every once in a while, but they are called UFOs and flying saucer sightings. And this comes from me as well. To be fair, there may have been some holographic images of UFOs, but also some legitimate sightings of them too. I want to keep that in mind. Also keep in mind the anti-gravity flying disc the Nazis developed in the 1940s. All right, the result of these deliberately staged events will be to show the world the new Messiah for the immediate implementation of the new world religion. Enough truth will be foisted upon an unsuspecting world to hook them into the lie. According to Mossad, the project has, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and I apologize if I'm not, but according to Mossad, the project has perfected the ability for some device referred to as tractor beams by ufologists to lift up an enormous number of people, as in a rapture, and whisk the entire group into a never-never land. We see tests of this device in the abduction of humans by those mysterious little alien grays who snatch people out of their beds and through windows into waiting motherships. That's quote-unquote from Mossad. The calculated resistance to the universal religion and the new Messiah and the ensuing holy wars will result in the loss of human life on a scale never imagined before in all of humanity. The Blue Beam Project will pretend to be the universal fulfillment of the prophecies of old. In principle, it will make use of the skies as a movie screen on the sodium layer about 60 miles. As space-based laser-generated satellites project simultaneous images to the four corners of the planet in every language and dialect according to the region. It deals with the religious aspect of the New World Order and is deception and seduction on a massive scale. Computers will coordinate the satellites, and software already in place will run the sky show. Holographic images are based on nearly identical signals combining to produce an image of or hologram with deep perspective, which is equally applicable to acoustic ELF, VLF, and LF waves and optical phenomena. Keep in mind, too, that the universe is holographic in nature, but that's a whole different show in itself. Specifically, the show will consist of multiple holographic images to different parts of the world, each receiving a different image according to the specific national, regional religion. Not a single area will be excluded. With computer animation and sounds appearing to emanate from very depths of space, astonished ardent followers of the various creeds will witness their own returned messiahs in convincing lifelike reality. Then the projections of Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, etc. will merge into one after correct explanations of the mysteries and revelations will have been disclosed. This one God will, in fact, be the so-called Antichrist, maybe even reptilian. Naturally, this superbly staged falsification will result in dissolved social and religious disorder on a grand scale. Each nation blaming the other for the deception, setting loose millions of programmed religious fanatics through demonic possession on a scale never witnessed before. In addition, this event will occur at a time of profound worldwide political anarchy and general tumult created by some worldwide catastrophe. It's getting close to that now. The United Nations even now plans to use Beethoven's Song of Joy, this was written in the 90s, keep in mind, as the anthem for the introduction for the New Age One World Religion. If we put this space show in parallel with the Star Wars program, we get this. Combination of electromagnetic radiation and hypnosis, which have also been the subject of intense research. In 1974, for instance, researcher G.F. Chaffetz said of one of the research proposals that in this investigation it will be shown that the spoken words of the hypnotist may also be converted by electromagnetic energy directly and to the subconscious part of the human brain without employing any mechanical device for receiving or transcoding transcoding the message, and without the person exposed to such influence having a chance to control the information input consciously. It may be expected that the rationalized behavior will be considered to have been taken out of their own free will. Keep in mind also that televisions and computer screens work on a specific pulse pattern that reduce brainwave patterns that mimic the brainwave patterns of someone that's been hypnotized. All right, the Sydney Morning newspaper published an item on March 21st, 1983, which announced that the Soviets were invading the human mind. The article, having been submitted to the foreign editor by Dr. Nathan Abnouanji, assistant professor in the Faculty of Agriculture in Asia, it is worth quoting the article at length, even though his grammar is a little old. This article relates to the Soviets who created the supercomputer we were discussing earlier, and which is really important because these types of computers can be run through satellites and through space. The computers were fed with all the different languages and their meanings. The dialect of all peoples were fed in the computers with objective programs. But we are no longer talking about the Soviets. We're talking about the United Nations, the minions of the New World Order, who are feeding the computers with the necessary information. The editor of the column in which the article appeared even states that the piece made points too important to ignore. I think it is possible that the persons who have created this mega mind control program could sell the software to an organization and not be aware that the client might use the program and data to enslave all of humankind. Artificial thought and communication, we're there now as far as this day and age. The advancement of techniques propel us towards the third step in the Blue Beam Project that goes along with the telepathic and electronically augmented two-way communication where ELF, VLF, and LF waves will reach each person from within his or her own mind, convincing each of them that their own God is speaking to them from the very depths of their own soul. Also keep in mind, going back to HAARP and electromagnetic waves, that the brain, the heart, thoughts, memories, and emotions all work on electromagnetic waves. Okay. Such rays from satellites are fed from the memories of computers that have stored massive data about every human on Earth and their languages. The rays will then interlace with their natural thinking to form what we call diffuse artificial thought. Let us keep in mind the capabilities, as I was just saying a second ago, of the electromagnetic weapons like HAARP have in relation to our own brain thoughts and memories. All work on these very electromagnetic frequencies. What kind of technology goes into the 1970s, 80s, and 90s research where the human brain has been compared to a computer? Information is fed in, processed, integrated, and then a response is formulated and acted upon. Mind controllers manipulate information the same way a computer for grammar manipulates information. In January of 1991, the University of Arizona hosted a conference entitled the NATO Advanced Research Workshop on Current and Emergent Phenomena in Biomolecular Systems. Keep in mind, NATO seems to be the predecessor to the global military they're beginning to develop. What does that mean exactly? It means this. We refer to one paper that was delivered at the conference which stands out for its different attitude towards the development under discussion at the time. It was, in effect, a protest and chilling warning to the attending scientists about the potential abuse of their research findings. Their findings, of course, stated that the United Nations has already developed communications equipment which can make the blind see, the deaf hear, and the lame walk. It can relieve the terminally ill from pain without the use of drugs or surgery. I'm not talking about science fiction. This is coming from the article from the 90s, by the way. A man might retain the use of all of his faculties right up to the moment of his death. This communications equipment depends upon a completely new way of looking at the human brain and neuromuscular systems and radiation pulses at ultra-low frequencies. Some of this equipment is now operational with the Central Intelligence Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It will never be used to make the blind see, the deaf hear, and the lame walk because it is central to the domestic political agenda and foreign policy of the manipulators. All right, let's move on here. Domestically, the new communications equipment is being used to torture and murder persons who match profiles imagined to be able to screen a given population for terrorists, to torture and murder citizens who belong to organizations which promote tolerance and peace and development in Central America, to torture and murder citizens who belong to organizations who oppose the development and deployment of nuclear weapons, and to create a race of slave called automatrons, what is popularly called the Manchurian candidates. Overseas experimentation is taking place on hostages held by the United States and Canada, Great Britain, Australia, Germany, Finland, and France. Now, this was in the 90s. Imagine where they are now. Additionally, there had been a long series of bizarre suicides among British computer scientists, all of whom have had some connection to the United States Navy. What is possible to ask before such a psychology of terror is this: would any government, corporation, or psychiatrist willfully promote such horror today? The answer is quite obviously yes. Also keep in mind that the U.S. government really is a corporation ran by the International Rothschild Banking Institution. Government agencies and the corporations that work with them toward the New World Order are prepared to promote anything that will help them achieve their objective to total social control. As for the question of why, for one thing, this is from the same article, for one thing, if you terrify the public and make them fear for their safety, they will allow you to implement draconian law enforcement practice, disarm them, and keep extensive records on them, and they only have to tell you that it is all to protect you, of course. Now keep in mind, in modern age, the Patriot Act, which suspends the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and names almost every single American citizen as a terrorist or a terrorist suspect. Okay. Secondly, it promotes the decay of the present guise of democratic forms of political systems and leads societies to search for alternative methods of political ideology. Of course, the alternative has already been planned. It is called the New World Order, and it will not have your safety or interests at heart. As George Bush said, read my lips, fear has always been used by powerful elite to control and subjugate the masses. George Bush Sr. is a big Illuminati tentacle himself. All right, not Junior. He's just the boy idiot. All right, let's move on. The old maxim, divide and conquer, is being played out to the limit worldwide to ensure that everyone is frightened for their personal safety and to be suspicious of everyone else. This, too, is mind control. To go further in regard to the new technology, which is at the base of the NASA Bluebeam project, we have to consider this statement by psychologist James V. McConnell, which was published in a 1970s issue of Psychology Today. He said that the day has come when we can combine sensory deprivation with drug hypnosis and astute manipulation of reward and punishment to gain almost absolute control over an individual's behavior. It should then be possible to achieve a very rapid and highly effective type of positive brainwashing that would allow us to make dramatic changes in a person's behavior and personality. Now, when we talked before about that kind of ray and the telepathic electronically augmented communication, the kind of rays that are fed from the memories of computers which store massive data about humans, human language, and dialects, and we said that the people will be reached from within, making each person to believe that his own God is speaking directly from within his or her soul, we refer to that kind of technology and that kind of thinking that same psychologist was espousing. That is, we should be trained from birth that we should all do what society wants us to do rather than what we want to do for ourselves. That's because they have the technology to do it. No one should now be allowed to have their individual personality. This statement and these ideas are important because it is the basic teaching of the United Nations that no one owns his or her own personality. Also keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that the UN was created after World War II by the Rothschild family. And that same psychologist claims that no one has any say-so about the kind of personality they acquire. And there is no reason to believe you have the right to refuse to acquire a new personality if your old personality is considered antisocial. All right. If you would go further, and I'm going to start speeding ahead here. I'm almost through this, but I'll be taking calls in a moment. If we go further in the different reports we have presented, we find that the mind control operations and technology include a transmitter that broadcasts at the same frequency as the human nervous system, which transmitter is manufactured by the Laurel Electro-Optical System in Pasadena, California. Laurel, a major defense contractor, has previously conducted research on directed energy weapons for Lieutenant General Leonard Perez of the U.S. Air Force, who was searching for a weapon that could implant messages into the minds of the enemy while urging his own troops on the superhuman deeds of valor. The device employs electromagnetic radiation of gigahertz frequencies, microwaves, pulsed at extremely low frequencies, ELF. It is used to torture people both physically and mentally from a distance. The process employed by such ELF technology are described in various U.S. Defense Department publications, including one entitled The Electromagnetic Spectrum in Low-Intensity Conflict by Captain Paul E. Tyler, Medical Commandant, U.S. Navy, which is included in a collection entitled Low-Intensity Conflict and Modern Technology Edict by Lieutenant Colonel David G. Dean, United States Air Force. The paper was delivered in 1984 and the collection published 1986 by Air University Press, Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. Another pulse microwave device can deliver audible signals directly to an individual while remaining undetectable to anyone else. The technology is very simple and can be built by using an ordinary police radar gun. The microwave beam generated by the device is modulated at audio frequencies and can broadcast messages directly into the brain. Now here we come to the NASA Bluebeam project. The broadcasting of subliminal two-way communication and images from the depths of space correspond directly to that kind of technology. All right, in his book, Body Electric, Nobel Prize nominee Dr. Robert O. Becker described a series of experiments conducted in the early 1960s by Alan Fry, where this phenomena was demonstrated, as well as later experiments conducted in 1973 at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research by Dr. Joe C. Sharp, who personally underwent tests in which he proved he could hear and understand messages delivered to him in an echo-free isolation chamber via a pulsed microwave audiogram, which is an analog of the word sound vibration beamed into his brain. Becker then goes on to state, such a device has obvious application for covert operations designed to drive a target crazy with unknown voices or deliver undetectable instructions to a programmed assassin. Alan Fry also reports that he could speed up, slow down, or stop the hearts of isolated frogs by synchronizing the pulse rates of microwave beams with the heart itself. According to Dr. Robert Becker, similar results have been obtained using live frogs, which shows that it is technically feasible to produce heart attacks with rays designed to penetrate the human chest. Keep in mind that both the authors of this report and his colleague died of heart attacks only days apart. It has been demonstrated that focused ultra-high-frequency UHF electromagnetic energy beams can be used to induce considerable agitation and muscular activity or induce muscular weakness and lethargy. Microwaves can also be used to burn human skin and aid the effect of drugs, bacteria, and poisons, or affect the function of the entire brain. These effects were all revealed at length by the CIA on September 21, 1977, in testimony before the Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, who directed the MK Ultra programs at the time, was forced to discuss the scope of the CIA's research to find techniques of activation of the human organism by remote electronic means. So this is something that exists right now that has been pursued to its highest degree and can be used from space to reach any person, any place on the face of the earth. In December of 1980 edition of the U.S. Army Journal called the Military Review, a column by Lieutenant Colonel John B. Alexander entitled The New Mental Battlefield, Beam Me Up Spock, that's what it was called, provides further insight into the technical capabilities at the disposal of a controller. He writes, several examples will demonstrate areas in which progress has been made. The transference of energy from one organism to another, the ability to heal or cause disease to be transmitted over a distance, thus inducing illness or death from no apparent cause. Telepathic behavior modification, which includes the ability to induce hypnotic states up to a distance of 1,000 kilometers, have been reported. The use of telepathic hypnosis also holds great potential. This is from the same report. This capability could allow agents to be deeply planted with no conscious knowledge of their programming. In movie terms, the Manchurian Candidate lives and does not even require a telephone call. Other mind-to-mind induction techniques are being considered. If perfected, this capability could allow the direct transference of thought via telepathy from one mind or group of minds to a select target audience. The unique factor is that the recipient will not be aware that the thought has been implanted from an external source. He or she will believe the thoughts are original. The third step in the NASA Bluebeam project is called the telepathic electronic two-way communication. Lieutenant Colonel John Alexander's article continues. If it is possible to feed artificial thought into the multigenic field via satellite, the mind control of the entire planet is now possible, and the individual's only resistance would be to constantly question the motivation behind their thoughts and not act upon thoughts which they consider to be outside their own ideological, religious, and moral boundaries. Once again, it is wise to consider how television, advertising, modern education, and various types of social pressure are used to manipulate those boundaries. It has been reported by Lieutenant Colonel Alexander, who said in the summary of his military review article, the information on those kinds of technology presented here would be considered by some to be ridiculous since it does not conform to their way of reality, or to their view of reality. But some people still believe the world is flat. Now, this means a lot because if people do not believe this kind of technology is possible or that it is science fiction, those people put themselves in great jeopardy because on the night when those 1,000 stars will shine from space, this is right from the article from the 90s, during the night when the new Messiah will be presented to the world, they will not be prepared and will have no time to prepare to save themselves against the kind of technology. They don't believe and they won't take time to prepare. Universal supernatural manifestations via electronics. This is the fourth step. It concerns the universal supernatural manifestation with electronic means. It contains three different orientations. One is to make mankind believe that an alien off-world invasion is about to occur at every major city on Earth in order to provoke each major nation to use its nuclear weapons in order to strike back. This way, the United Nations Court will require that all those nations which launch nuclear weapons to disarm them when the invasion is shown to have been false. And how will the United Nations know that the invasion is false? They will have staged it, of course. The second is to make the Christians believe that the rapture is going to occur with the supposed divine intervention of an alien off-world civilization coming in rescue Earthlings from a savage and merciless demon. Its goal will be to dispose of all significant opposition to the implementation of the New World Order in one major stroke, actually within hours of the beginning of the Sky Show. The third orientation of the fourth step is mixture of electronic and supernatural forces. The waves used at that time will allow supernatural forces to travel through optical fibers, coaxial cables, television, electrical and phone lines in order to penetrate to everyone at once through major appliances. Embedded chips will already be in place. Now think about the RFID microchips that they're already talking about wanting to implement on everyone at birth. Okay, phasing out cash and independence. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. There's a lot going on with trying to phase out cash, move to electronic currency, which also relates to the embedded microchips which work on electromagnetic frequencies. And last little news update here. This is moving forward past this. A bizarre spiraling light, this deals with the Norway spiral. A bizarre spiraling light was seen over Norway on 9th of December 2009 that created a visual black hole before vanishing. A bluish beam was seen to go up to the spiral as well as whatever it was witnessed by millions of people. This phenomenon made international mainstream news but was dismissed by the media as a Russian rocket that had lost control and failed. Problem with this explanation is it was far too clearly defined to have been the trails left by a rocket failure, and the Russians never admitted that it was theirs as the news has started. In fact, it looked as if it was a graphic image such as it might be generated digitally. All right, one more thing here, and then I'm going to take a call or two. Project Bluebeam, now this is just one theory of 9/11. I'm not sure if I believe this or not, but I like to throw all theories out there. I have seen some interesting video on this, but I'm not sure yet. But let me just say this. Project Bluebeam test called 9/11. There is so much proof that the towers, this is right from an article I grabbed, were cleared well in advance of 9/11 as no parts of desks were ever found or filing cabinets or computers, just phones and paper, which says they were emptied well in advance of the Hollywood stunt and that the planes were a holographic illusion preparing the world for Project Bluebeam, which is a false holographic second coming of Jesus that could only be the signs that could almost deceive the very elect like 9/11. NORAD never left the ground while planes were flying around for hours. The most controlled airspace in the world says these planes ever existed. The evidence that no planes crashed is everywhere, as even cell phones do not operate at 30,000 feet, says this was all Hollywood, especially at that time period. The black boxes have never been found because the planes have still been in service just to do a little searching on Google, and you will see for yourselves that these planes have still been listed as in service. This is just another take on the events of 9/11. And War of the Worlds, quickly, War of the Worlds, remember this, Orson Welles, I believe it was. Modern researchers and biographers have now disclosed that the War of the Worlds broadcast by Wells was a social experiment by the Rockefeller Foundation to examine people's response to the possible landing or sighting of aliens using nationally syndicated media outlets. The result was shown that the people will be in panic. So, ladies and gentlemen, NASA's Project Bluebeam could be used in conjunction with electromagnetic technology, chemtrails, and HAARP to produce various illusions in order to help push in the global agenda. The technology exists, but will it be effectively used by the manipulators? It is important to look beyond all illusions, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to end. I may be doing next week's show on fluoride. Not positive if I'm going to be able to do a show next week. I got family coming up myself. But I will stay online. The show is about to end live. I apologize for not taking so many calls, but I will take calls now, even if we're offline, because it will get recorded. I love you guys, and I will talk to you soon.